Castellon de la Plana, a Gothic-style town in the southeast of Spain, filled with history, is a hidden gem. Bordering the province of Valencia, its 112 kilometers of Mediterranean coastline is an irresistible touristic region in Spain. Mostly known for its mountainous beauty, traditional Spanish villages, natural surroundings, and beautiful beaches, Castellon attracts and welcomes thousands of visitors every year. For the purpose of this presentation, I will look at this beautiful town and culturally rich region and identify how well Castellon is marketed to potential visitors. How? By assessing its resources, the information provided on various sites. This will help to construct a preconceived image, the expectation, so to call. But additional research on nearby competitors, both domestic and international demand, as well as external factors Castellon is facing, has helped to build a SWOT analysis. Given the current situation, for example, the coronavirus being the most immediate threat, introduces additional layers of complexity. Keeping all of these in mind, the recommendation at the end provides suggestions on what the DMO can do to effectively market Castellon. Like most travelers, before embarking on a new destination, they rely heavily on some key information resources to gather a complete image on the destination they wish to visit. Similarly, I have identified 7 resources that I would normally consider before going to a new destination. These are shown in this table here. Information sources such as TripAdvisor, YouTube, and the official websites were used to actually gather more information on those chosen resources. During my organic research, the criteria I judged the information on were how honest and reliable the information given were, how accessible and easy is it to acquire information, how complete and up-to-date the given information were, and lastly, the broad usefulness. Well, let's look at the information provided and decide on if they were useful to any segment or if they were just too specific. Look, for instance, my demographic profile, being a student with limited disposable income, played an important role to what resources are appealing to me and how important those are. Based on the overall result found of each resources, I was then able to allocate an expectation score as well as an importance score on a 5-scale point, with 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. The overall information on Castellon were actually very accessible. I noticed, however, that in all of the local or in most of the local Spanish websites in particular, the sites were only translatable in 3 languages: English, Spanish, and Catalan. Well, this limited option may restrict potential visitors who speak different languages to fully grasp what the information are. Also, I noticed a lack of consistency in the information provided on the official website. Let's take, for example, 2 of the resources I listed earlier, the parks and the restaurant. On one hand, CastellonTurismo.com, the official website on Castellon, provided excellent information and guidance on the parks. They provide everything a potential visitors might need, even suggest how long it takes to actually walk the park. Therefore, I scored it 5 out of 5. On the other hand, on the gastronomy information page, well, that page contained events dated in 2018. That's 2 years old. Therefore, not very up to date. Also, there was a lack of actually diverse restaurant, subsequently obtained a very low expectation score because it was just not up to date, although that was a very important resource for me. How different were these resources in actuality? Well, not being able to formulate an actuality score based on primary research was particularly challenging. However, this actuality score reflected in this table here were based on the inputs of 3 stakeholders who have visited Castellon several times, videos on Google Earth and on YouTube vlogs of past visitors, and an accumulated primary scores of past visitors. Now, having both expectation scores and actuality scores, a two-dimensional framework comparing both was actually able now to be plotted and is as shown here. This visual positioning of the resources is particularly important because it identifies the strong and the weak performing resources. Everything above the expectation, the midpoint, represent strong resources, and those on the top left with low expectation but high actuality can tell the DMO that further marketing tools may be needed to capitalize these resources. But those on the top right are actually very well performing resources that must maintain that standards. Below the midpoint, however, reveal the resources that are not performing very well. Either it is a resource issue or it highlights potential that the DMO can actually do to further explore and increase the standards of these resources. Take for example my two-dimensional framework here. On the top right, the beaches represent a strong resource, but they must be maintained to not disappoint visitors who have high expectations of them. The top left. Well, I've argued that the resources on the midpoint should be viewed as if they were fully on the left, on the top left quadrant, because additional and clear marketing tools are necessary to move them to the top right. They shouldn't be ambiguous. The only resource in that category, but with both low expectations and low actuality, the bars and the nightlife. Organic research and measures to increase its potential is explained in my recommendation at the very end. A few major gaps this framework revealed between expectations and actuality predominantly were around marketing and the lack of information itself. For example, the lack of information on resources such as Taskas as an opportunity for a night out revealed a lack of information and marketing altogether. And also the fact that Castellon has a very wide range of available accommodations at any given price was not given initially in my organic research also revealed that this is not very well communicated. Therefore, the resources in Castellons are there, they're just not properly marketed or not properly and effectively communicated. This two-dimensional framework was particularly important in the drawing of the SWOT analysis. Having mentioned earlier the weak and the strong resources, so to call, we can now move on to the opportunities and the threats. Well, this was able to carried out by the help of some additional research carried out, such as the pastel analysis, for example, and more of that information is given in the appendices. But for the purpose of this presentation, I will only highlight on a couple of these issues. The overall concept of this SWOT is to actually build on existing strengths, realize opportunities while removing weaknesses and avoiding threats. This table highlights in the circle the elements that I will be looking at. As an opportunity, there is an abundance of funds available to support national and international tourism activities, and these can actually be used to better market Castellon internationally. Also, the fact that the Castellon airport is not being fully capitalized highlights that such an important resource is not being used to its full potential. Well, what about the threats? Well, new government legal regulations to control the coronavirus, for instance, will have some significant implication on travel demand and on local businesses. And also, 800,000 local Spaniards have actually lost their jobs, and 6 million of them on government benefits. Well, this will actually create a massive hole in the domestic demand, as they may perhaps decide not to travel. Keeping in mind everything that was mentioned, from the resources themselves, the information provided on them, the opportunities, the external factors and the threats they exercise on Castellon, I came up with 7 recommendations in my report. But in a synopsis, I will elaborate on just 3. Low expectation and low actuality resources. For example, the bars and the nightlife. Could the DMO expand on the idea of Tascas and other streets? Tascas was not mentioned in any of my organic research, but many stakeholders would actually benefit if Tascas was promoted more and there were more availabilities of that in other streets. Encouraging this will contribute to the nightlife, discourage seasonality as this can take place year-round, increase alternative offering with maybe cheaper drinks and food, and it will actually implement a much desirable Castellon at night. However, there are some social issues that this may actually cause: possible crime, noise and litter, pollution, and public intoxication, just to name a few. I mentioned earlier as a flaw in my organic research the fact that the information given on Castellon were just not very coherent. Well, I think more coherent information across all platforms should be encouraged. All official websites and other websites should be able to be translated in different languages to cater to all nationalities, especially in French, as 52.4% in 2019 of its tourist base were actually French. All platforms in giving the informations, these should be up to date, and if an event has taken place, just remove that information so everything is coherent. Inexpensive, this does not require much but just time. Lastly, increase Castellon's visibility. Search engine optimization is a process of maximizing the number of visitors by ensuring that specific sites appear high on the list of results returned by a search engine. When best places to visit in Spain was entered on Google, Castellon did not show up at all, not even when search was filtered to the beaches. Therefore, I suggest better search engine optimization may increase both domestic and international visitors as Castellon becomes more visible online. Although this is costly, the available government funds provided could be used to actually put Castellon more on the market. Thank you for your time.